Let's kick off the show with the Metro's front page, Josh.
Yes, so the big photo there, which we're going to get to later, is Germany. They have, that's a picture of the football team. They're all checking themselves for bad breath. So that's something that we're going to talk about in a little bit. And but the big story here is all about, well, the headline doesn't really make sense. Referendum in the bin. That's a terrible headline for what actually the story is.
I don't get it.
It's in the bin.
In the bin.
Yeah, but in
the bin.
All right, then it's pretty good.
But yeah, anyway, the story's probably more substantial than that pun.
I feel stupid.
I'm saying that as a Scotsman.
Yeah, so the story is that essentially the Supreme Court of the UK has said no, she cannot legislate for a referendum without approval from Westminster. So that's off the cards. She's saying she's not going to have like a wildcat thing or anything. But now she's saying this kind of plays into her hands because now she's going to fight the next election on the idea that if they win the most votes, then that really is like a secret referendum, or, you know, well, not secret. And as opposed to trying to run the country well.
Yeah, which devolution was supposed to, you know, have that sort of satellite parliaments that dealt with local issues and the sort of nuts and bolts things. Instead, it's created this horrible monster that fights back against Westminster, drains it for all the cash and resources it can, and just as a single issue, independence that it keeps banging. I mean, the last independence referendum was supposed to be a once-in-a-generation vote, and that was 8 years ago. I mean, I know Scottish people don't live that long, but that's not a generation.
Generations are inflating, Leo. They're much shorter now. It's generation
grandkids now.
Yeah, the Supreme Court didn't accept that it was only advisory. That was the caveat they were going for, which was obviously nonsense. And you think normal people would just move on at this point, but no, Sturgeon said, no, this is a whole mandate to run exclusively on this. Because then, of course, if she gets a majority, she can say, see, people want independence. So she's never going to stop. Nothing's going to stop her, ever. She'll be alive forever after a nuclear apocalypse, I think. But they're going to have some sort of special conference in the new year to hash out some nonsense manifesto that I look forward to. And in a way, it's sort of the blob rigging thing. You know how the blob's always rigging stuff against us now? But for once, it's the blob rigging things in a way I kind of semi-approve of. You know what I mean? Westminster saying, we're saying you can't leave, and it's up to us where Westminster... It seems a little bit of a conflict of interest, but because it's against the SNP, I like it.
But it's cost hundreds of thousands of pounds.
Oh, millions?
Yeah, well, OK, I heard hundreds of thousands. But whatever it is, that's been paid for by the taxpayer, probably... a lot of English taxpayers, because there's a big black hole because they've been so terrible, the SNP, at running Scotland. Yeah. So they have to do that. But I kind of feel like Westminster, the way she's speaking, it's sort of like Westminster has got their, like, Scotland's passport in their safe, and we're trapping them from going on holiday. Yeah. Essentially.
And yeah, one of the things that annoys me about it is that Scots who live in England don't get to vote, or wouldn't get to vote in a referendum, which so people like me. So any Scot that's sort of left...
You're Scottish?
I'm Scottish, but any Scot that's left Scotland and met English people and realised they're not actually quite as bad as Scottish people say, we're the ones who are most informed. We should get to
Basically,
to vote.
I've convinced you that English people are great, just knowing me. That's what you're saying.
Yeah, you're basically not that English. You're like from Cumbria, which is more.
We're gonna devolve next year in a referendum on that.
I don't think Cumbrians could actually devolve any further.
How dare you?
Thursday's Guardian. How do you make Michelle Mone? Send her to prison for fraud. Did you like that?
That's good, actually. Well, that's not bad. You're getting there. So, yeah, this is The Guardian. Conservative peer Michelle Mone secretly received £29 million from VIP Lane PPE firm. Now, normally you go, The Guardian, probably not true, but in this case, they do seem to be onto something. And I think we need to expose these people, because there was a lot of scams going on during COVID. So documents...
COVID.
During what?
COVID.
What did I say? Oh, the whole thing, yeah, the scamdemic. I didn't want to say it because I don't know what the broadcast regulations were.
That was demonetised on YouTube now.
Josh is saying that. Mine was satire.
I'm speaking for you.
So documents suggest her husband passed on money from PPE MedPro, which secured 200 million contracts after Mone lobbied ministers. And, of course, her spokespeople have said Baroness Mone did not declare any interest as she did not benefit financially and was not connected to PPE MedPro in any capacity. But leaked documents from the actual bank suggests that this may not be the case, and it turns out her husband seems to have possibly been paid 65 million in profits from PPE MedPro. So, you know, there's lots of aspects of the pandemic we need to look into. It's a pity that The Guardian and everyone else in the media was cheering lockdowns, but at least they're getting onto this dodgy contract thing. Perhaps she'll even end up in prison. Normally, when you get involved in a dodgy PPE contract, you end up in the jungle. But I don't want to... Just that satire again. Matt Hancock is above reproach, and that was a piece of satire.
Yeah. So they're saying that her and her children have got got 28.8 million in some offshore thing, and her husband
just from this one
deal. And her husband, he like works in the Isle of Man and doing all dodgy banking stuff and sending things off to different firms and whatnot. So this is like super duper dodgy. She herself, she's a former owner of a lingerie business. So I wonder if that might give her some expertise, sort of wearing pants over your face.
Somewhere to stuff the 50
money.
notes.
Well, I was thinking more just like in terms of preventing.
Oh, right, for PPE.
Yeah,
but we saw during lockdown, I mean, the government was in such a rush to get its hands on as much taxpayers' money as possible. There are PPE contracts being handed out willy-nilly. I think even the landlord of somebody's pub was...
Wasn't it? I thought it was Hancock's mate's pub, but I couldn't.
Hancock's mate's pub. There are people with no experience in making PPE, but, you know, the government was like, come on, we're just chucking money at everyone. And obviously some of that money's going to come back through nefarious, like could have happened here. It comes back through circuitous ways. They try and hide it, but in this case it's been revealed, like the Panama Papers.
They chucked the money and now they're chucking all that stuff away.
Yeah.
And
it was wasted money. Even the money that was spent well was wasted.
It was all for our health, Leo. Even the vaccine, when Bill Gates said that a vaccine can get him a return far greater than any other investment, he's purely just
he
a
meant
benign...
emotional.
Yeah, exactly. He meant an emotional return from helping so many people.
There's more of that satire. I love it. Anyway, let's talk about the front of Thursday's Daily Mail, Josh.
Drivers hit with 30,000 parking tickets every single day. So, this is 2.7 million tickets actually, no, just between April and June.
Yeah.
One every 3 seconds. And this is not from council. This is from, like, private companies. Super duper dodgy. But the other thing that's really terrible is, you know how, like, our government isn't actually doing any running the country stuff and constant bills are getting delayed and whatnot. Well, they had something here where they were going to be cutting the bills at the price that these companies would charge from £100 to £50. Seems like that's been pushed back yet again. And so we just got to take it.
Maybe somebody in government is getting kickbacks from these dodgy parking companies as well.
But this is private firms, isn't it? This is not council-run ones. But imagine getting a ticket every 3 seconds. Imagine that day. That would be like, what a rough day that is.
It's different drivers.
Oh, I get it now.
Yeah.
It's a sort of it's just a sort of misery tax, isn't it? It's just everything's so miserable and nanny state in this country now. I was just in a taxi. The guy was going 20.
Humble brag.
Not really. The guy was... Well, I had a car crash in one recently, so it's not really a brag anymore. It was more like a kind of flashback. But the guy was going 21, and the thing flashed. He couldn't tell if it was for him or the guy in front.
Right.
But, I mean, he'll probably get off with it because there's a certain leeway, isn't there? But you're already going 20 miles an hour, which is there's like children walking past you. And then you're 21, you get flat. I mean, I just think nanny state gone mad, Josh.
And if you drop below 20 to like 19, you get flashed for curb crawling. You can't win. You can't win.
I got a parking ticket the other day. It's so depressing.
You got a parking ticket?
Yeah.
Was it a council one? Are you going to fight it?
No, it was a cat. I literally parked out near my house. They put one of those temporary things up because they were doing something to one of the posts, and I was like, oh well, I'm going to be out by 8 o'clock anyway because I've got to get the kids to school.
Right.
And I was literally out at 8:03. I was just like,
what I do now,
£65.
Yeah.
I'm at that level where I just park the Lambo anywhere and just take the tickets and just it works out. You know what I mean?
What about is Thursday's Express front page, Nick? What have you got for us?
Yeah, this is a new dementia drug could be ready for next year, and we've actually covered this before because I remember trying to pronounce lecanemab and looking it up. And this is a lecanemab, Leo, and it's been shown to clear the brain of toxic amyloid protein, which I've always said. And this is a breakthrough drug, and it could actually be ready for next year, which means it could help Joe Biden win in 2024, which is that's the beauty of it, Leo. But on a serious note, guys, it's a breakthrough drug that could help many people, and it's actually some good news for once.
Yeah.
It's really good news. Yeah, I probably got it already.
Yeah.
All my family had dementia and died of it.
But this is the thing. I mean, I'm worried about, new dementia drugs and other drugs that come through now. It's like, have they come too late for me specifically? And in that case, do I really care?
According to that sentence, yes, because you were very halty. But there is a problem here where there are too few clinics to be able to diagnose it. Now, we know that we can get out a vaccine when we're ordered to by people who own Microsoft or whatever. But that's the scary thing is this stuff. We need more clinics. We need people diagnosed so they can actually get onto this drug. And also, one of the people who might do quite well would be Suella Braverman. There's a picture of her also on the top there of Daily Express. If anybody saw that clip of her today at the committee where she was just like, I don't know immigration, how people get in country. It was a pretty pathetic performance from her.
Well, politics is hard. Anyway, that's it for part one. Coming up, we go behind the front pages. We've got the SNP being a danger to women, even though Alex Salmond isn't involved anymore. And Just Stop Oil gets a rebrand. See you in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Headliners with me, Leo Kearse, and my pals, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Anyway, let's get behind that was very Fonzie. Let's get behind the front pages, shall we? As well as the independents, the SNP have been trying to make it easier for people to change their gender. I mean, I suppose if there's one place where men can pass as women, it's Glasgow. But it's possibly a danger to women, Josh.
Possibly, definitely. And it's not the gender, it's their sex that they're trying to say. So legally, you would change your sex.
Right.
And they're changing it from 18 to 16, and they're doing this,
So you change your age as well.
yeah, exactly. You can do it from 16 as opposed to 18.
Bringing down the age.
Bringing down the age, and also they're doing it that's self-IDing, so it's much easier for you just to essentially declare, and then your legal sex has now changed. What's happened is, and this is the headline, SNP gender reforms, dangerous women, UN official warns. This is Reem Al-Salem, who she's the UN Special Rapporteur on Violence Against Women and Girls. She has written a letter to the SNP, and it's the most damning letter. And essentially it lays out, this woman from the representative from the UN, lays out exactly what all these supposed transphobes have been saying, these women, essentially J.K. Rowling or whatever, saying, just pointing out the massive holes in this particular policy that the SNP have been pushing through, and essentially they announced it like last month. They're going to try and get it through by Christmas. There's all these inconsistencies with it, and
what are some of the ramifications of people being able to change their gender or change their sex? So you can get access to
women's spaces.
Women's spaces. So if I was convicted of a crime, not saying I will be, but if I was convicted of a crime, I could self-identify as a woman without the need for medical intrusion or whatever, and then be sent to a women's prison, which just seems crazy to me. I mean,
it's happened. I mean, it's happening. Yeah. It's happened. And the other thing is that, and people go, oh, you're saying that all trans people are all rapists and whatever. Well, first of all, 98% of sexual offenders are men, biological men, and a lot of what people think of as trans people haven't had surgery. They're still intact, whatever. But it's not that. It's that there are loopholes there that can be exploited, just like people did in things like the Catholic Church or wherever these places. These people will go in and exploit that system to attack vulnerable people, in this case, women. So, and it also and it's not just that one. It's like a whole load of different stuff that she points out, and like there's nothing in the bill about when people might change back. There's a lot of people who are detransitioning now. There's nothing in the bill about that. She already points out the Equality Act of 2010 already provides legally single-sex spaces. So how does this, as opposed to single sex, as opposed to gender and stuff like that? So there's just a whole load of stuff. There's this huge letter, lays it all out, and like I say, it's damn.
And of course, there's an incentive for criminals to transition, because then you get a new name. So if anybody searches your name on Google, they're not going to be, your old criminal records, court records aren't going to come up. Nick, what do you think of this? I mean, if you shaved, you could be Miss Dumfries.
Thank you.
Formerly Nick Dixon here. That's not his real name.
Yeah, don't stop dead naming me. It's of course, it risks enabling violent, degenerate men who transition insincerely, and of course, it's a risk to children because they're lowering it from 18 to 16. And you can tell by the fact that I agree with Josh that this is an issue where it's amazing that they're so tone deaf on this, because the tide has turned. And I just find it very hard to believe that the average Scottish person is on board with this stuff. The SNP are pushing here. Everyone is now waking up to it and realising we need to stop this. It's dangerous, it's wrong, and it doesn't make any sense on any level. So, but why are the SNP still pushing it? I think the SNP know that it's a vote winner amongst the sort of young and ideological, the woke
young people, basically, not to sound like a
stupid people.
GB News presenter, but yeah, with the woke young people, they're right on board with this because they don't see the potential dangers. And also people just don't know about the stuff that's already going on. So the Standiford Clinic in Glasgow is they've put children as young as 9 years old on puberty blockers. This isn't therapy. This is actual hormones that, you know, change your body and have, you know, long-term life-changing ramifications. And obviously it's a pathway to a full transition. 9 years old. I mean, that's insane. When I was 9, I wanted to be a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. You know, I don't think, you know, I should have had a turtle shell irremovably grafted to my back.
The detransition's gone very well, I must say.
Thank you, thank you. Got any pizza? Anyway, there have been calls for Just Stop Oil to be designated a terror group. Could we see some posh kids getting renditioned to Guantanamo Bay for chucking soup at paintings, Nick?
Let's hope so. Yeah, Just Stop Oil should be a prescribed terror group like Islamic State and National Action, says MP. This is former Minister Gareth Johnson. And it says that there are 78 terrorist organisations prescribed under the Terrorism Act 2000. They include Islamic State, Al-Qaeda, IRA, so on. And I've been saying this for ages. They are terrorists. We imagine they're not because they've been to art school and they're called Phoebe, but they are. They risk people's lives. They stop people getting to hospital and so on.
Not quite the same as ISIS, though.
There's obviously a question of scale. It's obviously a different scale, but are they different in essence? They threaten the country. They say if you don't acquiesce to our demands, we'll do this, and it'll get worse and worse. Who knows how far they'll go? Now, why is that not a terrorist? It's just that it's a rubbish middle class one, but it still is. So I totally agree with this.
Well, I think I disagree in that this is a very good article, actually, in The Telegraph, because it lays out the definition of terrorism according to the Terrorism Act of 2000, and it says what they do. And admittedly, there are definitely some things in there that they have done, this Just Stop Oil, like serious damage to property. I mean, you could argue whether it's serious or not, but certainly they're doing damage to property, endanger a person's life. That is true in terms of and even some people.
Well, a police officer crashed.
Well, yeah, exactly, and I believe some people in ambulance and stuff. Yeah, exactly. I'm not a fan of these guys by any means, but I just think it's a very slippery slope when we start prescribing organisations that we disagree with. I don't believe it's terrorism. It was the same MP here said it was. These people are not protesters, they're criminals. I agree with that. I totally agree with that. I just don't think they're terrorists, because the one thing here involves serious violence against a person. Now, that is how terrorism has been defined here, and they haven't fit that particular remit. They fit some of the other stuff, but I think it's a dangerous thing when we start going, I disagree with them and make them terrorists. I think they should be arrested. I think they should go to jail in some cases, but I don't think they're terrorists.
Can we beat them with sticks?
What?
You can.
One reason I want them to be taken more seriously is that we can all sense the establishment is sympathetic to these people, and that's why they're not tackled properly. That's what I believe, because they're not tackled properly.
The establishment is probably related to these people.
You try and do a anti-lockdown protest, for example, versus a Just Stop Oil protest, and the difference is enormous. Instead of getting beaten to the ground, it's like, oh, do you want a water? Are you okay?
I don't remember the lockdown people getting knocked to the...
Oh, they were. Yeah, they knocked to the ground.
Old women being trampled in
Holland. It was disgusting, but in this country it happened, and in Holland
Trafalgar
it was like...
Square, there's a woman, there's video of a woman being pushed to the ground by riot police, and she's like 65 years old, just a little old lady with a placard.
And in Europe, like in Holland, it was like release the dogs. It was like German shepherds attacking them. Horrific stuff. So the establishment is sympathetic, so they don't know what to do, but they have to treat them, if not as terrorists, then certainly as criminals. Yeah, absolutely.
And in Qatar, moving on, Germany wanted to wear rainbow armbands, presumably to highlight discrimination against leprechauns, but they weren't allowed to, Josh.
Yes, so Germany stars in defiant message to FIFA in team photo ahead of Japan clash after the World Cup ban on One Love armband. Now, this photo was on various papers, covers. We saw that in the Metro as well. And it's absolutely pathetic. Why? It's not, because it's not a protest when there's going to be no punishment for it. Now, if they were going on the pitch and they were wearing the armbands, and I would be like, respect. There's something at stake here.
Yeah.
Doing this does absolutely nothing. And it just shows how empty it is as a protest. It doesn't mean anything if you're not sacrificing anything. And they're not. And if anything, this highlights how pathetic they are. They'll do it when it's safe. They're not going to get in any trouble for this. So how's that like a real protest in that way? It's just they're making a comment, but that's not the same, and it's certainly not the same as what we saw with the Iranian team, who could have real life and death ramifications.
Oh, they'll be playing
protest.
the next game with no hands.
Yeah.
But Nick, what do you think of this?
Well, personally, I thought on the scale of pathetic World Cup virtue signals, it wasn't as bad as some, because at least it ironically points to the fact that we're silence and there's something sort of vaguely interesting or subversive about that. But really, I generally agree. And every time FIFA acquiesces to one of these things, like the armband and all this, it just shows that money talks, and it shows that you can sort of get political influence by hosting these events. And it also shows that our own values are pretty flimsy. Yeah. If you come in like, I'm going to wear my armband, oh, I'm going to get booked. No, I've changed my mind. Obviously,
like Martin Luther King wouldn't have taken the same stance. But he believed in his core message a little more. Obviously
pathetic. The truth is, we entered a Faustian bargain 12 years ago when we said this thing's going to be in Qatar, and that's what's led to all this, obviously. Yeah. The only thing I'd say, to completely contradict my earlier point, is that having seen The Last Leg, that song on The Last Leg, did you see that? That was going around Twitter.
Oh, yeah.
I'm now on Qatar's side, because that was so annoying. It's like, you know, lefty comedians on Channel 4 are still so annoying that I'm actually conflicted now. I might convert to Islam, and I'm not sure.
I'm watching the audience for that song sort of compelled to go along with it. It was like watching North Korean propaganda. It was amazing. Anyway, back to the UK, and the government appears to be trying to reduce the benefits bill by sending disabled people into space, Nick.
Yeah, well, this is actually a good story. It's the Express, and this is John McFall, Paralympic star. He was a runner in the Paralympics, I believe, and he's 41, and he's been chosen among 17 candidates selected to join the European Space Agency's astronaut class of 2022. And so this is very cool, because they could be the first disabled. He's going to be the first disabled astronaut in space, and they could also be heading to the moon eventually, it says here, which would be amazing, because then it would mean that disabled people were the first humans to have landed on the moon, because, of course, we never did it all those other times. That footage was faked.
Right.
That's satire again.
Right.
Less good satire than my earlier satire.
And there's a picture of him. I think he lost his right leg in a motorcycle accident.
What's his name again?
John McFall.
Anyway, so I'm very concerned about this story, because this is it's all about the European Space Agency. When people voted for Brexit in this country, Brexit means Brexit.
Good point.
And we should be having our own space agency with our own. We should be able to send up our own. Well, he is our own disabled person up into space.
Yeah.
And now we're having to rely on Europe to send. And I just think it sends out a terrible message.
But I don't think the space rocket is going to cross the Northern Irish border, so it should be fine.
I don't know. I just think that this is a betrayal of those 52%.
See, Josh is coming around. I knew it happened. Yeah. Eventually, enough time around us.
We
radicalised. Red pill.
Yeah. I'm a Remainer. Why am I? Anyway, that's it for part 2. Coming up, we've got more on the Balenciaga advert controversy, Kanye's oversharing problem, and the merits of mindfulness in schools. See you in a few minutes. Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Leo Kearse, and I'm guiding you through Thursday's stories. Joining me are Headliners residents Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Let's get back to it. Anyway, we reported yesterday on Spanish fashion house Balenciaga's worrying child porn images in its adverts. The photographer has spoken out, Josh.
Well, the photographer has spoken out, but also the brand itself has issued a massive apology, and they've pulled the image from its website and whatever.
They realised that child porn is bad.
Yeah, they needed a few people. So the photographer, though, he's a National Geographic photographer, so he's used to photographing naked. Well, he's basically said on Instagram, was like, he felt compelled to make those images. They weren't his decision. He was just sort of told to, like, he just did the lighting, and it wasn't me. And actually, he's actually got a fantastic argument, which is that essentially he's basically saying that by focusing on him, essentially stops the attention going to the real pedos out there. Which is like that's the gist of his argument. But actually, more photos emerged, admittedly he didn't take those photos, but from a separate campaign. And those photos are like super duper dodgy. We did mention like one of them had like a transcript for this paedophile in America, quoting
court documents.
Court document.
But
also,
the actual
from another thing now,
from a paedophilia case.
They had a book in the background, and the book has like this super sick, pervy, dodgy stuff, and then also there's like a framed certificate somewhere.
Yeah.
And the person in the framed certificate is the name of some like pedo as well. Like, what is going on?
Yeah.
This is mental.
Well, Nick, this just seems to be the future the left wants for us.
One could say that. Look, the photographer, first of all, this is an absurd excuse. It wasn't my choice. I'm just a photographer.
Yeah, he said, I was just there to do the lighting. It's like, no,
exactly.
you're the photographer.
Thank you. If you're a cinematographer and you show up at like a Disney, well, not Disney because they're dodgy as well. If you show up, like, let's say you think
it's going to be hard finding a Hollywood studio that doesn't have a hand in child pornography.
Correct. But let's say you're a cinematographer. You think you're doing like a Christmas comedy like Elf or something. You show up and it's like a porn shoot. You don't just go, I may as well just do it anyway. You know what I mean? You leave. As soon as this guy saw what the shoot was, you leave the scene.
I don't know, I turned up here and I stayed.
You leave the scene immediately. Also, the guy's photographed kids for years with their toys, and I had a look at it, and what I would say is, I don't know what we can legally say, but some dodgy, questionable poses, and so I questioned...
You were in that toilet for quite a long time?
I questioned the photographer, but also the court document. He's saying the court document, which was from a case 2008, United States versus Williams, concerning child pornography and so on, which was bizarrely in there. Yeah, he's saying that was a separate shoot. I accept that. Whoever put that there needs to be investigated immediately. Absolutely insane.
Do you think they're mocking, because the whole QAnon Pizzagate thing was all about elites in Hollywood and politics having child porn rings and child sex rings and stuff like that?
You think it's some sort of ironic thing? No, I
they
don't
had so many things. They had the panda eyes, the white rabbit. So these are actual sort of tropes from Pizzagate.
Oh, you think it's like him? He's one of the leaders.
Oh, you think it's like a sick joke? What's funny is that, or not funny, but grimly ironic, is that Balenciaga, Adidas were the ones that. It was Adidas and Balenciaga that had the shoot with the court document. I mean, they just cancelled Kanye as if they can have the moral high ground. Do you know what I mean? And then they're sort of promoting this stuff. And it just, and the other thing, like you said at the start, there's this weird thing in the everyone thought it was a conspiracy, but then you have like Epstein, you have everyone on Twitter trying to, or not everyone, but some weirdos on Twitter trying to talk about minor attractive persons. And there is this movement amongst parts of the establishment to normalise this stuff. Yeah. And it's incredibly sick.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And talking of explicit photos and Kanye West got in trouble for showing Adidas employees explicit photos of Kim Kardashian, and this is being reported as a bad thing, Nick.
Firstly, I don't know why The Guardian are dead naming him, because he's changed his name legally to Ye, and they've said...
I think he's also known as Ye.
Well, he changed his name legally to Ye.
But he also goes like...
Does he?
That's what it says here. It says, it's also known as Ye.
The Guardian's dead naming him, and he's...
I call him Jeremy Corbyn.
He's... I get that.
That's my nickname for him.
Yeah, and look, of course, I take it with a pinch of salt because... He said these horrific things about Jewish people, obviously, but he's a political enemy of The Guardian from before then due to his involvement in MAGA and Donald Trump.
And also he makes money, which I know The Guardian hates.
Yeah, so The Guardian's going to be out to get him. And so I question it immediately. Then again, the idea that he was in a job interview and he was leading a job interview and he said, my wife just sent me this and shows him a picture of Kim Kardashian. That does seem like the kind of thing he would probably do. He seems like quite an impulsive person. He probably would do that.
That sounds like a good job interview.
But people are saying, look, it was a tactic to break people down, establish their boundaries, destroy their boundaries. I find that questionable. I think he's just an impulsive person with some impulse control issues. Yeah. And he talks about him like looking at porn a lot. He's admitted he had a big problem with porn and now he's turned more to Christianity and tried to solve it. I'm certainly not defending everything Kanye did. I don't know.
That's nice of you.
I don't know if. Yeah, I don't know if this is a.
I think showing women porn. They all gathered together to write an open letter, basically.
Oh God.
To Adidas. Well, look.
Women
if you're a woman working in an office and he's coming up and confronting you and showing you porn, I don't think that's acceptable behaviour. Oh my God, look at this crazy lefty with his bad ideas because porn is bad. To show to women.
How many great men have women got to destroy with their open letters and hashtags? Before we finally... I mean, the economy's going to grind to a halt. Every person who generates wealth...
trainers, by the way.
The point would be not to condone that behaviour, but to question when the establishment has a political enemy, as we recently saw with the mass cancellation of Andrew Tate, who's now back, hilariously, on Twitter and everywhere else because they failed to cancel him. When someone becomes a target, they'll... stories emerge on them, and we have to question them. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, well, Andre...
Kanye's done enough bad things that we know about, or yay, but without. But so I question these. There may be something in it. Like I said, some of them sound like he may have done them.
I just don't think. Yeah, he just sounds like not a good person. Certainly someone you don't necessarily want to work with if you are a woman.
I want to work with them.
I'm fine. You show me your porn.
He's been
all the time. I don't mind.
He acts like everybody I've ever worked with in a warehouse.
He's been pictured.
It's like, hey, look at this. You know what I mean?
Here's a picture of me and Nick.
Anyway, now on to the Times and a different kind of predator. It's predatory gambling firms, and they're putting young men in hospital, John.
They sure are. Big rise in gambling addictions. And it's a 42% increase in demand for specialist clinics. And the NHS is basically calling these betting firms as predatory. I think when a lot of people, certainly my generation, you think of gambling and you think of people popping into the betting shop, and there's a social element to it. But now, because of obviously smartphones and it's online, it's 24 hours, the addictiveness, there's no doubt the addictive nature of it, and it is preying on them. And if you have that sort of inherent gene, I believe they've almost identified it as, it's ruining people's lives, and then people are committing suicide. This person here says that he said that there's basically a lot of people turning up in football shirts.
Yeah.
Right. I think things have got that bad because football shirts are very expensive. So if you're rocking up a football shirt,
maybe they
you haven't reached the
game.
lowest point yet.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Apparently, there are more than 400 gambling-related suicides a year. It says, and the football shirts thing.
I would have bet higher.
The football shirts thing didn't surprise me because
I laughed inside.
My immediate thought was, this is always pushed relentlessly on the football. You have Ray Winston going, gamble responsibly.
Yeah.
As if that's not the most absurd oxymoron, like murder kindly.
Yeah.
If you look up
Drink
gambling,
carefully.
the literal definition is take risky action in the hope of a desired result. Like, do that responsibly. It's absolutely obscene. And obviously safety culture can go too far, but I just find it surprising how this particular advice is kind of given a free pass.
It's not given a free pass. But sorry, just one thing is, again, the government has pushed back its bill that was meant to be coming in, that was meant to be increased, like 100 million
Somebody's
to be looking
getting kickbacks from a gambling
I'm just saying,
firm.
like,
This is how government
is this
works.
government going to do anything to stop this stuff?
Well,
no.
Anyway, now some good news. Children are unhappy, Nick.
All right, yeah, this is about mindfulness in schools. So meditation lessons should be part of a national curriculum to combat stress of going to secondary school. And it points out that happiness drops remarkably between 11 and 14, which is no surprise to anyone who's been to secondary school. You know, you're in a junior school or primary school, it's all quite nice. Then you go to the hell of secondary school with its kind of bullying and hierarchies and kind of just... Anyway, I've heard...
It could be puberty.
It could be that. It could be that.
Sounds like this show.
But anyway, the point is they're suggesting doing mindfulness. And it's actually not a bad idea because there were studies on things like transcendental meditation that found that if kids all got together and did sort of group meditation, that it did like...
Was that introduced by accident? They were actually trying to get the children to transition, but instead they got the wrong book and it was
That is how it
transcendental.
happened, but it turned out good because it actually can reduce violence and things and you know, disharmony in schools. So it's actually not a bad idea. I even used to do TM, but now as a Christian I've decided it might be demonic.
Right.
I think it's great. I think it's a great idea. I think my second son, Artie, he's going to be going to secondary school next year. I'm a little bit scared for him because the primary school he goes to is very sort of sheltered somewhat, and it's going to be a massive difference from like 1 form entry to 6 form entry. It's a hard, difficult transition. So I am a little bit scared. I think anything like this that can give you self-awareness at that age can absolutely have an impact. I would also say they should do maybe some lessons on consent and some stuff on not littering. If they can put those 3 in all together,
right.
I think that's a good use of time.
Right, OK. Well, there's been uproar over a child being exposed to a sexualised environment because it wasn't drag queens, Josh.
Yeah, this is the Daily Star. Dad takes 9-year-old to Hooters as reward for good school report.
What a legend.
Yes, so this is in Liverpool. There's one in Nottingham that because I don't know if you guys gig. Do you ever do the Nottingham Glee or just Tonic?
No.
So there's a Hooters there, and I've never actually been, but you know who's Catherine Ryan used to work at Hooters.
Oh really? Well,
Yeah,
we've got a
but
picture right now,
Catherine.
not of Catherine Ryan, but
Okay.
of that's the child at Hooters with the
and there's
women in the
some
background.
women behind him. Yeah, so I suppose
He looks happy.
In this article, the dad keeps on going on about how good the food is. The burgers are amazing.
Oh my God, those
food's
burgers.
delicious. Oh,
Those buns look perfectly
He
toasted.
said he's coming back every week for a dad and a lad night because the food's great.
Apparently, the way the kid got there was by claiming he didn't think Hooters was real, which is quite a good trick. So, like, I don't even believe it exists, and then you force someone to take you there.
So the kid said Hooters wasn't real.
Yeah, he didn't think it was real, so
Right.
they had to take him there to prove it was real. But I can't really laugh at this story because he's 9. If he was like a bit older, if he was a teenager or
Yeah.
something, it's just a bit weird, isn't it? If he's 9.
Yeah, it's a bit like you know, we can't really sort of partition this from the drag queen story or Balenciaga.
Yeah.
Sex abuse. I don't know if it's sexualization of.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah.
But
It's not as bad
But
as
the
those.
food is really good.
It's more of a sort
That's
of
what people
carry-on.
don't appreciate.
It's
how-
a carry-on type sexualisation.
If the
It's not
drag shows
serious.
had great food as well,
Yeah.
then it'd be fine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, there we go. Now we're not hypocrites. Good.
Yeah. And it's helping out some single mothers. Anyway, I've got some bad news. This segment is over. But don't worry, the last part is where things start to fall apart. We've got penis enlargements, nut allergies, and sexless marriages. That's just the panel. We'll also be discussing things that are in the papers. See you there. Hello, welcome back to the final part of Headliners. I'm still Leo Kearse, and there's still Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Anyway, let's crack through these perlers. Now to the Times, and a Netflix show is being criticised, but not for being rubbish this time, it's because it's inaccurate and rubbish.
This is Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. But this is Graham Hancock. He's a really interesting guy. I haven't seen the series, but I've heard him on podcasts. He's very interesting because he has these theories that sometimes it's called Atlantis theory. The idea we had incredibly advanced societies in the past, but because they were too dependent on technology, they died out, and only the sort of primitive cultures survive, relatively primitive survive. Which is quite an interesting theory. And so and this is based on similar things. However, of course, he's in trouble all the time with the so-called archaeological establishment, the swamp of archaeology.
The so-called experts.
The climate change scientist of archaeology.
He needs to drain the archaeological swamp because he's outside of it. It says, I'm not an archaeologist, I'm a journalist just looking into this stuff. And so he's a disruptor like Trump or Musk. You know, you've got to be outside the system.
I wouldn't go to Trump from an archaeological fact.
No, but it's often that disruptors from outside the system that can change.
Well, people who don't have a scientific or an archaeology background.
But it's interesting, isn't it? He's just raising
and provides no evidence at all.
Well, settled opinion is so often wrong. I mean, we used to think there was this primordial soup. Now they say the primordial soup's not a thing. They were talking about the Ice Age in the 70s.
Yeah, we used to think that leaving the EU would be bad.
Now the Ice Age is not a thing, and now it's global warming. We used to think the world was round, Leo. Now we know it's flat. So things change.
Well, apparently the world is pear-shaped, or it just feels like it's going pear-shaped.
Sort of
but
cone.
It's like a toroidal, some sort of weird...
It's a cone.
It's a cone. The world is a cone.
It's flat here, and it's like a snow globe, and then it kind of goes...
Right.
Yeah, all ancient cultures thought it was like that. We came up with this round thing. It's nonsense.
Right. Okay. And it's thicker at the equator.
I've seen the pictures.
Well.
I've seen those pictures in space.
Yeah.
It was just 2D.
Josh, what do you think? I mean, because surely there'd be traces of some of these advanced civilizations.
Well, that's exactly what it is. The point is, and this is actually quite a good paragraph here as a blueprint for conspiracy, because it says he doesn't present any real evidence. There's just a range of negative evidence, endless possibilities, suppositions, untested claims, and many explanations for why there isn't the evidence. And that's like so many conspiracy theories where they prove it through this lack of evidence, as opposed to just the fact that they don't have anything to actually prove it. That's terrible. Yeah, sorry.
Well, he's saying it could be hit. Things could have been hit by a meteor or a glacier.
Yeah, but it could have been. He's got no evidence.
They're still making up stuff about glaciers now, though, in real time. You know,
oh my God.
Well, there was an article the other day.
Would an asteroid wipe everything out to that extent? I mean, you'd still surely be left with, some
If you go
pegs.
to other sites like the Daily Skeptic, you find that there is a whole other narrative on climate. There's all these other facts that don't get reported in the mainstream media. Go to the Daily Skeptic.
Are you plugging your own website?
I find them informative.
This is shameful.
No, I have no
interest. You can find out why I think this is shameful on my Patreon.
Or listen to the Weekly Skeptic podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I've got an underwear company if you want to check that out.
He bought it off Michelle Mone. Yeah. Anyway, now to the Daily Star, and I understand your wife has contacted a clinic on your behalf, John.
She has indeed, yes. The headline here is, I run a penis enlargement clinic and unsatisfied wives keep booking appointment. So this guy, he's called Dr. Botox, or actually Razvan Vasilas, and in Marylebone he's got a clinic, and essentially he can make your willy bigger. I don't know if we're allowed to say willy, as opposed to saying, we've said penis.
You'll find out in an email tomorrow.
Find out, yeah. But yeah, what they do, it costs, this is a good thing. Look, so this is great stuff here. 1,600 quid. Then the next 2 sessions, they're 20 minutes, painless supposedly, I don't see that. And the next one's another £1,000, but you've got to go back every 2 years.
Right, to keep it reinflated.
To keep it. And here's a bit of advice here. He says you've got to massage it every night.
Oh, no problem.
It in good
no problem. Yeah.
Easy peasy. I'll do it in the morning as well if you want. And no sex or onanism for 2 weeks.
And is it sore? It sounds like it'll be sore. I remember the word on Channel 4. Somebody got this done, and they injected fat. They took fat from liposuction, injected it into his manhood, and it was the size of a suckling pig, but it looked incredibly painful.
See, I've had it done the other way. I've had it sucked out of my willy and put in just to fill me out a little bit here, which is great.
I find it incredibly hard on your question, Leo. It said the 20-minute painless filler procedure. I'm like, I find that highly questionable. I just question that. I couldn't really relate to this story, of course, but because I don't run a penis enlargement clinic. But this thing about it'll go back to its normal size after 2 years.
The fact that you had to say that
seems like a bit of a warranty issue. To me, but the sad thing about the story is that these partners are booking it on. These women are booking it on behalf of the men.
Yeah.
Isn't that a relationship that perhaps needs to end? I mean,
no, I think that's someone who loves someone else but isn't being sexually satisfied, and and then they're sort of trying to fix it, as my wife said.
Well, we're constantly being told that, it's not how big it is, it's what you do with it. But that's obviously a lie. Anyway, the Daily Mail now, and sticking with the gynecological theme, testicles. Do testicles need a warning sign saying may contain nuts, Nick?
Yeah,
Good link.
Another one of these stories has got through. So this is a woman who's allergic to nuts who was left with a burning vagina after having sex with her partner. Medics say traces of nuts in his semen was to blame. And it's very hard to comment on that within broadcast regulations. So
just broken about 5 rules. Just reading the headline.
Yeah, they were trying to have a baby, but this was thwarted by vaginitis. She blamed his nuts, the ones he consumed, that is, of course. And
these nuts.
It's it's okay. And yes,
sorry.
This is it's
You're
a big,
professional broadcasters, by the way.
it's a problem.
Sorry,
This actually, I've been out with someone with a nut allergy, and this reads like propaganda from them because you weren't even allowed. One wasn't even allowed to eat Snickers on the terrible, on the very, very slim chance that it could somehow, infect them. And this story kind of.
So you were with a woman. You're dating a woman, and
Never said woman.
She wouldn't let you eat Snickers.
She was so beautiful, I went along with it. She wouldn't let me eat Snickers, because
Why
of
were you
this,
so desperate to eat a Snickers anyway?
Well, once you're not allowed to do it, Leo, suddenly all you want is Snickers. I didn't think about Snickers before.
It's
Now
not a double-decker.
I eat 3 a day now, just on principle. But this is... Yes, carry on. I've got nothing left.
Josh, have you got anything on this allergy coming through to...
No, my wife is
fluids?
totally fine with nuts.
Right, OK. Absolutely fine with nuts. No...
It's fine. No, but I mean, look, but it's good. You know what? This is science at its best. Because it's quite a rare condition, but there's been a few people. This occurred some women on OnlyFans as well. So I really find that this is encouraging. I think this is humanity using the development of our species to sort of really solve these mysteries. And I wish we could I wish they'd done an episode. What's that thing, Monk? Is it? What's the one where he uncovers these medical mysteries?
It should be in that thing with the archaeologist.
They
on a slightly more eugenics-y vibe, if they're so sensitive to peanuts and they're trying for a baby, should they even have kids? Because it'll die within 100 yards of a peanut, right? You see what I'm saying? The Louis C.K. thing about that is...
But apparently you can condition yourself. If you've got nut allergies, they can condition you using tiny, tiny traces of the nut, and then they build up the dose.
So this is a way of doing it.
So this is possibly, depending on how much you ejaculate.
Homeopathy.
Moving on to the next story. The Independent are now talking about couples sleeping in separate bedrooms, Josh.
Yeah, experts explain why couples can benefit. And if you have some kind of sleeping condition, it really can make an effort. Supposedly, it's going up. In the 1970s, it was quite popular, and you'd see it certainly in sitcoms, and also Sesame Street. You had Ernie, and they were in separate bedrooms. But if you have one of the partners has a loud snoring, sleep apnea, or night terrors, which my wife suffers from, so every 4 or 5 days, she'll think she's being attacked and then attack me. Or jump up and go, "What? What's going on?" Sort of go cry in it, and I have to be "It's okay, nothing," But then it disrupts your sleep. It's at 3, 4 in the morning, and so you're in the middle of your deep REM, whatever it is. So it can be a massive pain. But I'm not going to move to another bedroom because of it. Because there's 7 of us in a 3-bedroom flat, so I've got no choice.
That's actually a good point, because the only reason people started sleeping in the same room apparently was due to the Industrial Revolution. It was due to poverty. And this is part of the rhetoric I always use when trying to sleep in a separate room, because I've always had a problem sleeping if there's anyone else there. And the only other person who's been able to relate to me about this and said they had the same was Lewis Schaefer. That's when I knew I was in trouble. I was like, OK, I'm probably mental. But it is a real problem. Like you say, if they're snoring, or if you have a completely different... If you're sort of somewhat insomniac and they're an early riser, it's a nightmare. And there's someone has... It all started because of this tweet. Someone said, I think I want separate bedrooms when I'm married, unless maybe the bed is super big. But even so, we can decorate our own rooms the way we want and have sleepovers. OK, the last bit was weird. What was the sleepovers bit doing in there? But apart from that, I agree with this.
Eat some nuts.
And the Queen used to do it, as you'll know.
Yeah, but she's got a big house.
But if it's good enough for the Queen, then I think more people should be doing this, because you can't sleep. But there's a taboo against it.
No, it does also say that it cannot be good for intimacy as well.
Yeah.
It's nice to get into bed. That's the best thing about being in a long-term married.
Exactly.
Get in and have just a cuddle.
But that's interesting about the Industrial Revolution ending, that meaning people slept in the same room.
Yeah. So that's it. It's always promoted as the thing you should do, but I always point out it comes from privation.
People had more space before the Industrial Revolution, and we were all brought together to work in factories and stuff. That's interesting. Anyway, now my favourite genre of story, the annual Winter Wonderland Nightmare, Nick.
Oh.
Yeah, mum's angry at being charged £47 for 2 bags of pick and mix at Winter Wonderland, and she just didn't see this coming. It was outrageous. Once they put it on the scale, they were like, what's going on? But the problem is they felt they had to buy it because the girl had started eating the sweets already, and it's that lack of discipline that undid them, Leo, because otherwise they could have seen the ridiculous charge, they could have just thrown all the sweets back in and got away with it. And the Winter Wonderland has issued a statement to that effect, saying that if they were not unhappy with it, they could have removed items or put it back or something. But the kids started eating them, and that was the issue.
No, they got the timing right. What you got to do is eat them all before you get to the counter, not after you wait. What are you doing? Ridiculous.
Yeah, I can't believe somebody pays for pick and mix. That's like, I mean, no wonder they got a shock. They've got to pay for everyone else's pick and mix that's been stolen.
Yeah, pun intended.
Have you ever? Because I actually got some pick and mix at an Odeon cinema the other day, and it was all dried out and horrible, and
How much was it? 47 quid.
It didn't cost 47 quid, but it was about...
It costs a lot.
It costs a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, popcorn, all that kind of stuff, it costs loads of money.
I go to the shop next door.
I never leave the house.
Under my shirt.
Yeah, totally.
I tell the kids to be quiet while we rustle in.
Anyway, that's all we have time for. Thank you to my brilliant guests, Josh Howie and Nick Dixon. Headliners will be back tomorrow, as it is every night at 11 p.m. with myself and Josh. See you then.